growing up in Fredericton was a tricky business. Fredericton tends to be very divided into its various classes and interests. And unless you are accepted into one of these situations, you are very much an outsider. And because my father was a politician, we had to be outside. We couldn't be, and I don't think we would ever have been in any one of these classes. There was the church, there was the military, there was the university, da-da-da-da-da-da. And somehow we didn't belong anywhere. And this was a certain amount of grief to me, because it meant that I didn't have a lot of friends. I did have one or two very good friends, and they still are good friends, thank goodness. But I didn't belong to any crowd. I didn't run with a crowd. And so I was a loner. So growing up in Fredericton to me meant being a loner, spending my time in the library, and shutting myself in my bedroom cupboard to paint. And so it was useful. It was useful to me growing up and eventually becoming a painter. If I had run with a crowd, I wouldn't have had that lonely, thoughtful existence. Yeah. I had been trained to be an artist at Mount Allison and partly in Glasgow. And that's all I had. That's the training that I'd been given. And therefore, I decided that since I was living in Salmonier, I would either reject that and feel sorry for myself, or else I would accept it, accept the training that I'd had, and get on with it. And it just seemed sensible to get on with it. It wasn't what I wanted to do, not at all. Not when I was working in the kitchen and in the bathroom and any place where there was a place where I could set up an easel. I felt that it was sort of foolish. But my parents had paid to have me educated, and I was going to take advantage of what they'd given me, somehow. Each house I've lived in and each place I've lived in has affected me, pretty strongly, because I had to look after it. I didn't really have to look after Fredericton very much until my mother got old, but it was my childhood home, and the way the light came in through those western windows in the afternoon and so on, and the smallness of the rooms and the compactness of the house was so perfect. It was a perfect house, and it never occurred to me that all houses weren't perfect. So it stands for me as the house of my life. Salmonier was a rambling, not finished, cold, drafty, uncomfortable house, but it had wonderful light. It had wonderful light. And the living room faced the river, and so and that faced east. So it was perfectly positioned, as the house in Fredericton had been. It faced east as well. And it sparkle and so on within that house, in the living room particularly, was just wonderful, just magic. But it was a very difficult house to keep clean and tidy. It was just all over the place and not finished. It was never meant to be lived in all year round. And so little bit by little bit we sort of finished it, but never really. Not to my requirement, not like Fredericton. But this house that I'm living in now is wonderfully built with heavy timbers. It's as solid as a rock. It's a crazy house. Absolutely mad. I mean, it's all over the place. And if I hadn't put an elevator in it, I wouldn't be able to live in it now. And the windows are all vertical, and they make vertical shapes everywhere, which nearly drive me crazy. It's not got the kind of light that I want, and it's got a deck out there that has straight lines all over the place and all kinds of lines that I have to deal with all the time. It is the most imposing house on my work that I have ever had to deal with. And I am very aggravated by it. And I wish I had some great big windows that let the light in properly instead of these wretched vertical windows. But it has brought a different order to my work. And I've had to think of my work very differently because of this house. Sometimes I think I really have never left Fredericton. I can't get away from it. It still rules the way I set the table, the way I cook, the way I do all the little sort of ritualistic things that make up my life.